Good morning. Hello and welcome to GCSE Chemistry's first walking talking mock. So there's various different ways in which you can approach this. You can either print the entire paper and you can complete the paper in your own timed conditions. You can do it with or without your notes, depending on where in your revision you are. And then you can use this walking talking mock to mark your answers and see what you know and what you don't know, what you need to work on. You can also just use this walking talking mock, choosing questions that you know that you struggle with and work through them with me. You can do one question at a time. Throughout the walking talking mock, we will focus on exam techniques. We will focus on some different styles of answering questions, different ways in which questions are asked. We will take a look at key definitions and really build on some of those skills that's really necessary to gain the maximum amount of marks in the paper. So I would suggest printing out the paper because that would be the easiest way for you to answer the questions in the space allocated. Make sure that you have your periodic table with you. All papers come with a periodic table, so make sure you have yours, and please make sure that you have a calculator as well. Now it's really important that we read through the instructions of our paper. You can see that it's instructing you to write in a black ink only. You need to add your name, center number, and candidate number. Obviously that's not needed for our session today, but that is what you would have to do in the exam. So today we're going to take a look at paper 1C, which is the chemistry double award paper 1. Time allocated for this is 2 hours. And it asks you to have a calculator and a ruler with you. This is the paper that was sat in November 2023, so it's not the most recent paper. But as with any sort of exam preparation, really practicing exam questions is really the way to go. Right, then some of the advice that they give us here is they say read each question carefully. If you have a highlighter with you, it's really, really important for you to look out for the keywords. That really tells you what the examiner is looking for. Your answer should be written neatly and in good English. Focus on things like punctuation and grammar, even though this is not an English paper. That really contributes to your overall answers. Make sure that you use capital letters. Really focus on the spelling of key scientific words. Try to answer every question. This is so important. Do not leave any blanks, and check your answers if you have time at the end. That is really important. Once you've finished your paper, it is really important for you to go back and just double check, especially with calculations, because it's so easy for us to make a simple mistake. Right, so you can now decide if you want to do question 1 on your own or if you're just going to walk through it with me. So it says at the top, some questions must be answered with a cross in a box. If you change your mind about an answer, put a line through the box and then mark your new answer with a cross. Right, so let's read our first question. So it says that a substance can exist in 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, or gas. And when a liquid evaporates at room temperature, it changes to a gas. Okay, now we know that the different states of matter is interchangeable. Substances can go from being a gas to a liquid to a solid by heating them up or cooling them down. And we know evaporation is when a liquid turns into a gas. Now they ask you to complete the diagram. So there's our keyword, complete the diagram, to show the arrangement of another 4 particles in a gas. So they very specifically ask you for 4 particles, and they ask you to show how that is arranged in a gas. Okay, it is also really important for you to take a look at how many marks is available for your question, because that often tells us a lot of information. And here we can see we only have 1 mark available for that. So you need to draw 4 particles, and they should be randomly spaced, and they should be quite far apart. So I'm going to draw a particle here. We really want them to almost be the same, roughly the same size as the original one. So we're going to draw 4 particles just like that, and that will gain you 1 mark for that. So that will be 1 mark for your 4 particles. Okay, let's move on to question B. So once again, you can pause the video here and complete question B, whatever way you feel most comfortable in answering these questions. Okay, question 2 asks us to explain. Now, lots of students get this wrong. So this is really important for us to think about really what does the word explain means. So what I always tell my students, if you see the word explain, you basically have to use because in your answer. So you don't necessarily have to use the word because, but that helps us. You have to say what happens and you have to say why it happens. So that's an explanation. Lots of students get confused with explanations versus definitions, explanations versus descriptions, and that is really vital for you to understand if you want to gain the full marks. So now we can see that for this question, we have 2 available marks. So we need to realistically write about 2 things for this question. So the question says, explain why heating a liquid causes it to evaporate more quickly. So we have to think about what heating does to the liquid and why that then allows it to evaporate more quickly. So when we heat the liquid, we know that the kinetic energy of the particles hang on a second. If of the particles decreases, I'm making really random shapes here. Let's just try that again. Sorry about that. So the kinetic energy of the particles, there we go, particles increases. Okay, and because of that, the particles will have enough energy to escape. You can also say that it gives it more energy to overcome the intermolecular forces. Remember, the intermolecular forces is what keeps our particles either as a solid or a gas or a liquid. It's got nothing to do with collisions, so your answer shouldn't have anything about collisions because we're not talking about reactions. There are no bonds being broken. It's only intermolecular forces that's being broken. We're not breaking any bonds, so be careful that that's not in your answer. And you can't really talk about vibration because it's not a solid. Remember, solid is the only particle where it has vibration as part of the movement. Right, moving on. So that would give you 2 marks, 1 for saying that the kinetic energy will increase, and then 1 mark for saying that because they have more energy, kinetic energy, they now have enough energy to escape. Okay, moving on to question CI. So question C says, when the temperature decreases, so we're now on a decrease in temperature, water in the gas state changes to a liquid, and then give the name. So we don't need to have any other information. We only need to say what the name is, and if we're changing from a gas to a liquid, we know that that is condensation. Okay, so this is for 1 mark. 1 mark if you get the word correct. Make sure that you have your spelling correct, because this is a key term. So 1 mark for condensation. Right, part 2 of the question says, write an equation. Write an equation including state symbols to show the change of state of water from a gas to a liquid. Okay, so when we talk about state symbols, we know that we can have solid, liquid, gas, or aqueous. So S for a solid, L for a liquid, G for a gas, and AQ for aqueous. So we have water going from a gas to a liquid. The symbol for water, or the chemical formula, is H2O. So it's going from a gas, so we have a G in brackets. We have our arrow, remember it's never an equal sign, and then it's going to a liquid. So 1 mark for that. Please make sure that you see that the H and the O is capital letters, and the 2 should be smaller than the H, and that should be significantly, it should be obvious for the examiner, and you will then score 1 mark for that conversion. So if you unfortunately have either of the state symbols incorrect or anything of the symbol, you won't gain any marks for this. Okay, moving on to question D, which is the last for question 1. And in this case, we have a describe question. So we have a describe question, which means we don't really have to say why, but we have to say what is happening. And if the question wants us to describe the arrangement, so 1, and the movement, 2, of the particles in a solid. So there's 2 things that we need to talk about. So let's start by talking about the arrangement in a solid. So we know in a solid the particles are packed really closely together and they form a regular lattice. So we can say the particles are arranged in a regular lattice for 1 mark. And then for our second mark, so that was the arrangement, and then we have to talk about the movement, and we know because the particles are so close together, they can't really move, they can only vibrate. So the particles vibrate around a fixed position. We know that the particles can't move, and that will gain you 2 marks, 1 for the arrangement, 1 for the movement, and that will be a total of 7 marks for question 1.